finally, I said, you know what? They're not my mother. She's the only one who can be angry and disappointed at me on a constant level. So here's what you guys can do. You can fire me, and I have not put anything up on the walls yet. I can be out of here in a hot second. I'm fine being fired. I will go shopping. I love it. Or you can never call me again. There's nothing more I can do for you. If you are that upset, fire me. Let me go.
Then the pilot aired, it got good reviews, and on that same day, they sent her flowers, and they never bugged her like that again. You have to stand up for your vision.
Hello and welcome to My Hollywood Story. I'm Stacey Wilson Hunt. My guests today are the Emmy-winning TV writers, directors, and producers Amy Sherman-Palladino and Daniel Palladino, the brains behind such iconic series as Gilmore Girls and The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Since 2017, I've had the pleasure of interviewing Amy and Dan about their work, and suffice to say, it is never a boring experience. This conversation was no different. In front of a live audience at Neuhaus Hollywood, Amy and Dan, who are partners in both life and work, recall their biggest artistic inspirations growing up in LA, how their unique and often bizarre writing careers intersected in the early 1990s, and why making more episodes of Gilmore Girls isn't entirely off the table. Just a quick programming note. This conversation was recorded about a month before Prime Video announced the premature cancellation of Amy and Dan's latest series, Étoile. Please welcome my special guests, Amy Sherman-Palladino and Daniel Palladino. Come on down. First, I just want to say hello. It's always nice to see you, two of my favorite people in this crazy, crazy world. And congratulations on Étoile. How has it felt to be sharing your latest creation with the world?
It feels good. It feels like 25 years since we started Étoile because we had the strike in between, and then the Olympics kicked us out of Paris, and then we had to go back to Paris, and then there was a lot of editing, and there's just so it feels like it's time to let someone other than us stare at it.
And what has been the most heartening feedback you've gotten so far?
Actually, it's been from the dance community. We were a little nervous.
Because that's important to you, I know.
It's the most important thing, because this show is about them. It's about their lives and struggles, and the worst thing that could have happened would have been, like Tyler Peck going, not really what I wanted it to be. And instead, I think they've been they're very happy with it, or they're happy to our face. Who knows what they're saying behind our backs, but to our face, they've been delightful.
Well, that's all we can ask for, really.
Yes.
So we will talk more about Étoile a little bit later, but because this is your full story today, and each of you was born in Los Angeles, your stories begin in this city. And Daniel, I'd love to know, where were you born?
I was born in Van Nuys, California.
Hello, Van Nuys.
On Van Noen Boulevard. I was born right in the Valley at Valley Presbyterian Hospital. It's still there. And then I grew up very close to there in Reseda.
And what did your parents do for work?
My mother worked at like elementary schools as like an office clerk, and my dad had a very mysterious job that I never found out what he did at Lockheed, which was in the West Valley.
Okay. So nothing gleaned about your dad's profession?
No.
Okay.
Nothing.
That's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah.
A lot of questions unanswered. And Amy, if there's one thing that I have gleaned and that we can all glean from your work, you were raised by colorful, interesting people who probably like to talk a lot. Is that a fair estimate?
What a wonderful way of putting it. Yeah. My dad was a comic, a stand-up, and my mom was a dancer. They were always a little on stage. My mother just turned 94, and she's working on what she says is it's my last one-woman show. I think this is the last one. I don't know if it's the last one. I don't know where she thinks she's going. I think.
And where does she perform? Wherever she can.
The minute the covers come off in the morning, she'll fund like equity waiver theaters in the Valley, and so she's acting, and she was supposed to have written a memoir, which I'm terrified about, especially since like neither one of my parents had any sort of like
Memories.
grammar skills or truthful memories, or like I think they're still sticking with I was an Indian princess descendant at some point. I'm not sure why they're holding on to that one. That one seems not plausible, but they just were very. My dad was very, very funny, and my mom shoved my ass in ballet class at 4 years old. So I basically have a career because of the two of them.
And we have a 12, maybe because of that.
Yes.
And do you have siblings?
I don't.
Okay.
It's just me for them to focus on. It was great. It was just great.
And Daniel, do you have siblings?
Yeah, I have an older brother, older sister.
Okay. And where were you sort of in terms of the family dynamic? Were you the consummate youngest kid?
I'll put it this way: when my brother was born, because my dad took pictures of the kids. There were like 300 pictures of my brother. There are about 50 pictures of my sister, and I think there's one of me. So, but that's kind of the sweet spot, really. Sure. It's like he was the oldest boy. They focused on him. She was the glorious girl, and I got to run around and just play.
And maybe you had more freedom because you were the third.
Yeah, I totally had more freedom.
Okay, so it was totally worth it, even if your life was not documented at all.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
No, there's no documentation.
So, Daniel, if I can glean something from your work, it is an obsession with music. Is that a fair statement? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And if I can glean from Gilmore Girls alone, I'm going to guess that some of these are your favorite bands. Sparks.
Yep.
XTC.
Oh, yes.
The Talking Heads.
Yep.
Velvet Underground, and David Bowie.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've watched a lot of your shows. Can you tell?
Yeah.
What was your first favorite album, and which album changed your life? And maybe that's the same album.
I was obsessed with music since I could remember. I had an uncle that worked at Capitol Records. He was a engineer, and he engineered like all of the Nat King Cole records. He did a lot of the Sinatra records. This is back in a time when recording engineers were not credited. So unfortunately, he didn't get a lot of credit. They're starting to catch up and put credits like that on new reissues. But he did like in the wee small hours, and he was at Capitol Records for 40 years. So what he would do every Christmas is that he would just tell somebody, like, get a stack of like 50 vinyl records, and I'm going to give it to the kids. So it was everything that Capitol had, from soundtracks to stereophonic test albums that had like ping pong matches going from side to side, and Stan Freberg comedy records, and some progressive rock records, and all those kinds of things. So there was a very eclectic mix of vinyl in my house. But I would say, I think the very first, I'm going to date myself, but then when you go on IMDb, you can carbon date me like within a month.
I think this is true. That's true for
like,
all of us now.
You just can't lie anymore.
No, you can't lie. I was not like 12 when I was writing. It's like you can figure out how old I am.
You're ageless, so, and youthful forever, both of you.
I am, for sure,
Yes.
for sure. But the first Monkees album was like the first vinyl record that I was given to be my own. I still have it. Rock
Were you playing
music.
instruments too? At
Yeah,
this time?
I played in bands in LA for several years. I played keyboards in bands.
So, Amy, going back to dance for a moment, you said your mother politely / forced you to dance at the age of 4. But what did you enjoy about dance? Did you find it to be a natural activity for you?
Well, it wasn't really forced, but it was just sort of like that's what your life is, and so it was just sort of accept your reality. I will say that I believe that everybody should put their kids into dance, no matter what, boy, girl, for a few years, because I think that the thing that you get from it, whether or not you're going to become a dancer or not, is you get a sense of your own body, and it makes everything a little easier growing up, because you just have a sense of your physicality. You have a little more, you know how to sort of hold yourself. It's standing up and sort of taking your space isn't a scary, weird thing. It's just sort of something that just sort of comes with the territory. I think it helps self-esteem. I think it helps. It definitely, it's it's a very internal feeling of like knowing where you are at every moment. You kind of know, like you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh wait, today's going to be a day where I'm going to go to class and everything I do is going to work. And you just know it. You can't explain it to someone, or you're going to wake up and you go, oh, today's the day I should probably not leave the house. I should probably just stay inside away from people no matter what. Like you get very connected to your body.
And also in relation to others too.
Yeah, yeah. And because you're always touching, first of all, you're in leotards and tights all the time. You're basically not wearing anything.
You can't hide.
Yeah, there's nothing to hide. When you get into partnering, a guy's gonna, if he wants to get you up in the air, that hand's got to go where the hand's got to go. Like it's just like, there's something about it that I think because teenagers, they're teens and everything is horrifying. Like, I don't know. And I look and I'm like,
And there's so much shame too.
There's a lot of shame and there's just a lot of, I look, what's that? And I'm not saying that there's not issues that come when you become a professional dancer, because there is a lot of like, you're comparing
Unhealthy
your
obsession
body to that
right.
and whatever. But there's unhealthy obsessions about everything, no matter what in life. If you're going to be human, you're going to be unhealthily obsessed about something. Right. So but I do think it gives you sort of a physical confidence that I think goes through the rest of your life.
I'd like to say a very special thank you to Neuhaus for being the exclusive venue partner of My Hollywood Story. Neuhaus is a gorgeous private work and social space for creators, innovators, and thought leaders to connect in Los Angeles and New York. As a Neuhaus member myself, I can tell you firsthand how amazing it is to work inside such iconic, beautifully designed buildings, while also enjoying elevated hospitality and thought-provoking cultural experiences. To me, Neuhaus has completely redefined the ideal environment for creative potential and progress. To learn more and apply for membership, visit neuhaus.com. Hey everybody, it's Stacy. I just want to say a quick thank you for listening to the show and let you know how much I've enjoyed seeing all your messages and feedback. It's gratifying to know that so many listeners from all over the world, from Nigeria to Australia to Denmark, are downloading, enjoying, and hopefully feeling inspired by My Hollywood Story. On that note, I have a question for you. Who would be your dream guest on the show? Please drop your ideas in the comments section, and I'll see what I can do about getting them on My Hollywood Story. Thank you again for listening, and now, back to the episode. What was something that you wrote when you were young that you felt excited about? Whether it was in school, something that you wrote for fun, a poem, a short story?
Yeah, I actually remember that because I went to Catholic school for all my elementary school, and it was mostly nuns. And don't get me started on nuns either. I don't like nuns, even though I do not like nuns as in general.
Sound of Music out.
Yeah, but although we had two family friends who were like I like ex nuns.
Sure. Well, they've got lots of fun stories, and they like to drink and party.
Yeah.
Right.
They're the ones who thought, okay, this is not the life for me. But what was your question?
Just something that you wrote that meant something to you.
Yeah, but they had non-religious teachers. They called them lay teachers, and we had this Mrs. Medlin, who was like fresh out of teaching school. She was hot too. Whoa, we boys like.
She was West Valley hot.
Yeah, she was like, she wore short dresses. The nuns are like in these old habits.
So she stood out, certainly.
Oh yeah, she definitely stood out. But she was really encouraging of creativity. In generally, nuns are not. Who got me started on nuns?
Hey, this was all you, Dan.
Amy, put the microphone down because I'm going to take up an hour on nuns. But I mean, I remember writing a funny essay and a couple of funny essays, and she would have us read it in front of the class, and it was getting big laughs. It didn't want me to be a performer, but I really did enjoy the writing of it and hearing people laugh at it. I remember her sitting there laughing at it. So it was great to see an adult that wasn't my parents laughing at something that I said. So yeah, I have a very specific memory of that.
I love that. And Amy, first of all, what kind of student were you in school?
I was a good student if the teacher was interesting. I was not a homework or bothered to take notes, or I either learned it in the moment or it was gone forever. I was the worst at math. I mean, my mother horrifically pulled me because they were at the time that I was going into junior high, they were starting busing, and they were like busing kids to other schools, and I didn't know what that meant. To me, like to me, it was like, wait, farther away from my parents. Hold on, that sounds like kind of a great thing, but they didn't want that, so they put me in this gifted program, and that's the first karmic joke of my entire life, is being in this gifted program and all these like really smart kids who had been together since like kindergarten.
Right. Those kids kind of met in first grade.
Yeah.
And then they were sort of like an exclusive clique.
Right. And I came in 7th grade, showing up wearing like a beret with a pom-pom. It was just a disaster. I was great at the classes were very tough, and I was a dancer. So to me, I'm like, this is all like not me. I don't care about this. So like I had a great history teacher who just made history about the story. So I was great in his class, but I was horrible in math. And they kept trying, I was in something called logic, which is never.
That sounds terrible.
It was horrible.
I still cannot picture Amy meeting logic.
No, it
in
was
any way.
Just like it was like P implies Q if the sun is shining, but the sun. It was just like like to me it was like, well, I don't know. So they made me stay after school for like 3 months to try and catch me up, and finally, like literally, the teacher and I just kind of looked at each other, and he's kind of like, I'm just gonna give you a D, and I'm like, I'm good with that. Like it was just like, because he's like,
Just get me out of this class.
Yeah, it's like I can't do anything with you, and I'm like, yeah, like this. Let's just agree to disagree. Like, and so I was in this gifted program that I did really well if I cared, and if I didn't care, I just was like completely the
That's
worst.
a recurring theme among a lot of creative people I meet, is that the things they cared about and loved excelled.
Yeah.
And then the things that thought, not really going to use logic in my life.
And weirdly, like English was not, like history was way more interesting to me than English, because English was like you read a poem and then you'd read a book, and then suddenly they'd be breaking down the book, and I'm sort of like, why am I breaking down the book? Like, I read the book. I get the book. Great Gatsby. Okay, I get it. He's rich. She's Daisy, whatever. There's a car crash.
The green
blah,
light.
blah, blah.
Don't forget the green light.
Well, yeah. And like, what does it mean to you? And and all of a sudden it's like, oh God, I've got to be reading things into something. And it's like, can it just be about like a rich guy and a dumb girl in a car crash? It's like, it's deeper than that. And so I was not the great, although weirdly I graduated with honors. So figure that out, public school. That was
the LA public school
It was
system.
the LA public school. It's like I had a silver tassel for no reason whatsoever.
And sort of looking to your futures when you were teenagers or even finishing high school, what did you see for yourself? Did you see yourself as a professional dancer? Did you see yourself, Dan, going into comedy writing?
No, I actually was more doing music, and I didn't know quite what to do with it, but I was always in bands. I was in a band in high school, and we played backyard parties that the LAPD usually broke up if we were
He
successful.
had a pair of blue clogs that I've seen in pictures.
I was
that
searching
are
for my look.
fabulous.
Stop bringing up the blue
I
clogs.
can't, because it's all I think about.
I'm
when
trying
I
to
look at
imagine, what do
you.
blue clogs even? I've never seen a blue clog.
They were
There's a picture of me.
baby blue clogs.
I was kind of searching, and I wasn't really like my schooling did not really connect with me. I was always very curious, and I always read a lot, but I kind of coasted through school. My brother and sister went to the same schools, and they were straight A students, and I was not, and I was more unkempt, and I had a sassy mouth and all that stuff. So I just sort of like was just kind of gliding through, but I was playing in bands, which kind of gave me a community. And back then, the LA scene, you didn't have to pay to play in a club. You like played Madame Wong's, you played all these clubs, and you got like $20, which was incredible haul. Paid for gas, paid for a couple of beers. So yeah, I was kind of drifting. In
You were
music.
finding yourself.
Yeah, and I kind of forgot about writing, and I got into writing later.
Okay. And Amy, were you just full throttle dancing full time after school?
Well, yeah, I mean, I am deeply gifted with the lack of any sort of thinking into the future. I don't consider anything ever, which has actually served me very well. I'm not a planner. I just sort of like, this is, so I was in dance class. I was going to be a dancer. That's just sort of what it was. And years later, when I was in my 20s, we were having dinner, and my dad turned to me one day and said, "Did you want to go to college? Because we would have sent you." And it never occurred to any of us to even have the conversation about college. And I remember once, because I was in this damn gifted program, and you're supposed to take these dumb gifted classes, and then you're supposed to go.
It's an expectation.
I
of a
never took
gifted
the
person.
SATs.
What?
It was on a Saturday. I had ballet class. I did not take the SATs. I was like, literally, it was like, what am I going to go to do this? I'm going to study for what? Like,
we're like the worst role models
worst.
for anyone listening
like,
to
no
this.
one followed this path at all.
We're terrible.
I just sort of like, that's what it was going to be. And then I fell into writing completely accidentally. I was in an improv class.
You don't want to hear any aspiring writer.
It's
does
bad.
not
It's
want
a
to hear
bad.
this story.
It's bad.
It's
It's
a very
not-
depressing
It's
story.
really not good. But I was in an improv class, and the girl there was another girl who was very, very funny, but nobody could really deal with her because she was very, very filterless, which is why she was so funny. But like, we hit it off, and we were like really good. We were very good pals. And so like, she wanted to write spec scripts, and I didn't care. And I'm like, sure. And we would hang out and eat ding dongs and drink tea. And then I would go to my cattle calls at the church on Highland, where they held every big cattle call. And like 90% of my life was spent sitting in that parking lot.
For dance jobs.
For dance jobs, with a number tapped on me, and to go in and stand there and for them to go, no. And then that was hours out of your day. And then she's the one who sort of finagled. She was teaching, it's a long story, but she was teaching comedy traffic school, which I don't even know if exists anymore. But it was traffic school, and if you went until you took a course, you could get your ticket off your record. It's Hollywood, so like all the comics talk, so whatever. So she would go there, and she was sort of like make everybody tell her what they did for a living, and if they were at all in the business, she would make them read our spec scripts. And I kept saying to Jennifer, like, this is a terrible idea because everyone in town is going to hate us. And she's like, no, it's great, it's great. And she was like very, very aggressive. And she got this guy who worked at a company called Lorimar, which doesn't exist anymore, to read our scripts. And he called us on a Monday and said, I've called CAA, ICM, William Morris. I've set up meetings for you.
Now I know why people would hate you for hearing this
Oh,
story.
and it gets worse. It gets worse. So we had those meetings set in the meantime, because I thought, well, I don't even like know how to use a computer, or like, it wasn't computers, it was like word processors at the time, or I didn't even know what the format for writing a script was, because I would stalk around the room and she would type. I took a weird class at UCLA at night just to literally learn like interior. Someone walks, like, I just didn't know like the basics. And the guy teaching the class was a writer, and he was working on a show called City, starring Valerie Harper. And he said to me, what are you a writer? I'm like, I'm not a writer, I'm a dancer. I just need to learn how to type. And he's like, okay, well, but I've got this partner and she wants to be a writer. And he goes, well, why don't you guys come in and pitch just a few ideas? You'll get some experience pitching. So Jennifer and I spent like 5 days coming up with the worst pitches in the world. Like, when she gets her period, she's clairvoyant. I swear to you, that was a pitch we came up with. Like that, we just thought that was hilarious. But we went in and we pitched, and Paul Haggis was running the room. Whatever, Paul, I don't know where Paul Haggis is now. But at the time, he said, we pitched all of our great period clairvoyant jokes, which were, it was a room full of dudes.
This is the Valerie Harper show.
This is the Valerie Harper show called City. And the end of this ridiculous pitch, Paul Haggis says, okay, I'll tell you what. Take this pencil, and if you can throw the pencil up and get it to stick into the ceiling, because it was that, what is that?
Yeah, acoustic
Acoustic
tile. Yeah.
He goes, then we will hire you.
And just for people who maybe don't know his name, he wrote $1 Million Baby and Crash.
Yeah, he's like an Oscar winner.
So he started on Facts of
He
Life.
was a TV writer.
He was a TV writer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we kind of went, ha ha, and he goes, no, I'm serious. So for 45 minutes, we tried to get a pencil into the ceiling, and if you thought I was bad at logic, I'm even worse at pencil into ceiling throwing, and finally even they couldn't take it, and he goes, it's fine, you have the job. So he, of course, bought none of our I don't know why he didn't buy her grade. She's clairvoyant when she gets her period idea. I still think that's just there for the taking. But they gave us an assignment, and we wrote it. And then the next week, so we were starting to work on this assignment. So the next week we had all of our agency meetings. So we got to walk into all of our agency meetings saying, oh, by the way, we already landed a writing gig without an agent. So we got to pick our agents, because they're all like, okay, you're girls. And clearly we didn't tell them about the period joke. We kept that to ourselves. So we signed with the Morris agency, and then we wrote the script. And then it was, Roseanne had fired everybody and was restaffing, and they had no women, and they needed women to write for the two girls on the show. So we went in, and it's not the job we wanted. We also met on a show called Babes, and that's the job we wanted because we're crazy. We didn't want the Roseanne job. And then the following week we got a call that said they're going to buy our Roseanne spec script was one of the scripts that we had written as Roseanne spec. They're going to buy that script, and if they like the script, they'll put us on staff. And so we went in to meet on the script, and then they just put us on staff. And so literally from the time Jennifer said, why don't we write some spec scripts, to the time I got on Roseanne was maybe 6 months.
Oh boy. You were right, Dan.
It's the worst story ever. It doesn't happen. And
she's still pursuing dancing at this point, because she doesn't really think that
when
is
I
going
got
to be a
Roseanne, Jennifer called and said, oh, we got the job. And I said, yeah, but I'm on a callback for a touring company of cats, which I wasn't going to get because I lied and said I did gymnastics, which I don't. And I said, so what if I get cats? And she goes, well, you don't go because we have an actual job. And I was like, okay. And but that's what happened, and that's why I am a writer and not in Cats, and not still touring as Rumpelteazer, which I would have killed it. I would have killed Rumpelteazer.
Hey,
I know.
it's never too late, Amy. It's never too late.
It's a little late for Rumpelteazer.
This episode of My Hollywood Story is brought to you by the new Starz drama series Outlander: Blood of My Blood. An epic tale of love, legacy, and longing, this highly anticipated prequel series premieres on Friday, August 8th on the Starz app. And Dan, your first official credit was Who's the Boss, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I had worked on a couple of things at a staff writer level that were very short-lived, and then there was a strike, a 5-month strike in whenever that was. And it kind of wiped me out, and I was living off savings, and I was starting all over. And so I went out, and back then, this was a great system, and I wish we did it today. Just go out and pitch freelance scripts. So it's like kind of what Amy did on City. So like 227 was on, I went in, I pitched 8 stories, they didn't buy any, I did it for a couple other places, but you're getting experience as you go along with that. And then I pitched to Who's the Boss, and they liked me. I don't think they picked anything specific, but they said, come on in, and we're going to give you a script. So that's kind of how this started. And I was across the street at Sunset Gower.
Again, the nexus of everyone's lives, this neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, these corners, I mean, I have a lot of memories. Because it used to be the Columbia Bar and Grill across the street. Now it's some sort of empty office, and this was the CBS radio, I think.
Yeah. And what was the script that you had pitched that they didn't necessarily want?
It was, because the strike had ended and the networks all wanted the 22 episodes as quickly as possible, everybody was behind. It was kind of fortuitous. Like the strike kind of wiped me out, but then they needed a lot of content. I don't remember. I probably have those pitches somewhere, but it's a show that was following an arc, and I didn't know what their first 6 episodes were for that year. So you're just kind of going in and really just taking the best shot you can at something. And I think they just, I'd studied their...
Angela gets her period, and then she gets
and then she gets clairvoyant, yeah. So I'm still friends with Judith Light, too, which is great.
The best.
That
was such a great show.
I don't remember, but I think, part of the freelance thing is you're also meeting someone and you're deciding, I think I like the way you think, you're prepared and all that stuff. And I was more handsome at that point.
I don't know when that system went away, but no, you're not. You're more handsome now. Just take it.
No, I mean after my not getting molested by a priest period where I was ugly.
Well, you fix your teeth.
If the priest saw me at the age of 28, oh my God.
Once
You
got
would have
rid
been
of-
all
Once you
over
got rid of
me.
the demon teeth, it was all good.
So I'd like to jump to when you met
More nuns. Oh, no, okay.
and your personal lives and professional lives intersected. What did you most enjoy about each other when you first met? What were your first impressions?
Well, Amy's writing partner set us up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing about Jennifer Heath. I mean, she had a profound effect on Amy's life.
Yeah, I kind of owe everything to Jennifer Heath.
But I was working on some show that wasn't good with. I wasn't running it. We were just sort of on the staff with Jennifer, and she said, I'm my ex-writing partner. I think you'd be perfect for her. I'm going to set you up on a blind date. And I said, I'm not going to do a blind date. I'm not going to do a blind date. She goes, okay, well, how about if I invite her over for, like, we used to have, like, group writer lunches outside in Culver City. And she said, I'll invite her over. I said, fine, invite her over. So I'm pretty sure, so Amy drove out and came in. You were wearing sunglasses. You were having a hard time on Roseanne. This is your third year on Roseanne. And I'm pretty sure, like, Jennifer said something like, this is Amy. She's having kind of a hard time now. And the first words I heard Amy speak were, I'm in hell. And I said, that's the lady for me. Yep. It was pretty instant. Like, someone that depressed and willing to
so bad.
express it in
It's
such
very
a clear
sweet,
way.
actually.
3 words,
It
very
was
clear.
So bad.
So I asked for her phone number. This is before all these fancy
Of course,
devices
of
we
course.
have.
No, it was pretty fast. He gave me a barrel of monkeys. I still have it.
Oh,
The game,
that's
yeah.
sweet.
Mhm.
Now, where did you guys go on your first date? I'm so curious.
We went to
Campanile.
Campanile. I kind of closed the deal. Campanile is, some of you will know it, but a lot of you won't. It was a really nice restaurant on La Brea, where Republic is now. Really great building. It was Mark Peel. Not Mark Peel.
Peel, yeah.
Mark Peel.
And
He was Nancy
Silverton.
Nancy
They were
Silverton's
married at
first
the time.
restaurant. Yeah, so they were married at the time, and they had this fantastic restaurant. But it was a really nice place. I went high on the hog.
And it was worth it. We're so happy you found each other, by the way.
Thank Jennifer Heath, for God's sake.
Yeah, where is Jennifer deserves a special
No, she
cake
does.
or something.
I just got her number again. I have to call her. Jennifer and I stayed friends we never, like, our parting was actually quite, because we were only partners a year on Roseanne, and I'm an only child. I couldn't share my room with someone, and I didn't like sharing, like, the phone would ring, we both pick up. It was just too weird. And also it was like a time where, and I actually, like, I say this only just to the kind of time it was, but, like, it was not as, in terms of how misogynistic writers' rooms were, this was, like, way down on the totem pole. Like, Bob Meyer, who ran the show, was an amazing guy and was really great to me. So, but we were the only 2 girls for quite a while, and they called us, like, the Go-Go's. And they put, like, a pinball machine in our office because it was the biggest office because we were a team. So the guys would just walk in and play pinball while we're typing and trying to write a script. So it was just like one of those things where I'm like, and I was still, like, the first year, I was still like, I don't want to be a writer.
You were reluctantly doing this work.
Yeah, like, it's just like all the guys showed up. They were all wearing, like, white button-up shirts and jeans and white sneakers. So none of them go outside because they never got dirty, and they all look like drove like Jaguars. And I was like, whoa, this is.
You liked your men rumpled,
Yes,
essentially.
I
Sure.
wanted somebody, with damage from nuns, and, like, these guys were,
Two broken people who found each other. Nothing makes me
Yes.
happier.
But I went to him and I said, look, I'm really unhappy. I don't think I want to be a writer anymore. This is, like, not for me. I said, but I'm afraid to do this because Jennifer does want to be a writer. And if I leave, then Jennifer doesn't have a job, and that seems completely unfair. And he said, I'll tell you what, why don't you guys split? I can't pay you separately, but I will treat you like 2 separate writers. I will give you your own offices. You will write your own scripts.
Is that true? Because the guild wouldn't allow that today. You would just have to become separate
Well,
entities.
he treated us like separate writers.
So you got your own scripts,
own script.
but
yeah.
you were still paid as a team?
Yes.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah. Don't turn us down.
Don't let
it
the
worked
du-
out. It worked out
Let
fine.
me get the WGA on the phone.
And the first script of the second season, where we were in separate rooms and I got my own script and she got her own script. He gave us the season opener, which was Becky Goes on the Pill,
That's a good one.
Well, it's the only Emmy nomination for writing that show, the best written show on television at that time, ever got. And it was insane. And believe me, the men hated
and the
us.
writers were just
They
so
were
proud
so
of the Go-Go's.
mad. They were so
course
mad
they
at the
were.
Go-Go's because it was sort of like it was the one show, like if it was, because it was baked in. It was baked in. Nobody was doing it, and it was a really good show.
But that's a great showrunner to know to give them that script.
Sure.
And know to take the flack from those
He was the
egotistical
best.
guys.
He was the best.
And Roseanne being the woman on the show in terms of talent, was she collaborative with you in terms of? Okay. I didn't want to presume, but I thought maybe that was going to be your answer.
Rosanna's always been insane. She was just a different kind of insane. The kind of insane she is now, I never could have seen coming. It was a whole different world of insane. It was much more focused on, because she was much more of a feminist, and she was much more, it was much more focused on, I want to torture men, which she did. She flat out, she said, I could never have a woman run my show because I can't be as mean to them as I can be to a man. Yay, girl power. But the year that I came on was year 3, and she and Tom had just found their love for each other. So actually things were like really calm and great, and Bob was a great showrunner, and we were really allowed to do our work as a group. And she was, as long as she got a good script, she was fine. Like she was happy to like rehearse and leave, and she was, it like everything that first year ran really, really great. And the second year was good too. And then Bob Meyer left, and everything started to get a little wonky.
And you had met Dan at that point, and then you could...
Third year. I met
year.
Dan
Okay.
third year. I met Dan when someone else was running the show, and I was in hell. The worst showrunners in the world don't want to go home, so they will just
So they're keeping you there all night.
It was like, tonight, we're going to stay all night, but it's going to be pie night. And I'm
You're just
like,
like,
what
I need
the
to go
fuck
to
is
sleep.
pie night? And it's like,
How
everybody
about going
gets
home night?
everybody gets to buy their own pie. It's like, I don't want a pie. I want to go home. Like, there was pie night. There was hat night. It was that kind of thing. It was a very rough spot. And then Roseanne and Tom fired him, and he wouldn't leave. And one of the other guys was running the show, and he would like come in every day, and we were all like, why is he still here? It's very strange. And then someone would say like, Tom's coming down the hall, and he would run and hide in the bathroom. It was just like, things started to get like really psychotic that year. So like when I said I was in hell, like I was like literally in hell. Like it was just so weird, and I didn't know what was going on. And the fourth year I stayed, but I stayed making an agreement. I will only write. I don't want to go on stage. I don't want to I just want to sit in a room. I'll rewrite everybody else. I don't care. I just want to sit there in the quiet, in the dark, and maybe everyone will forget about me. And then I left.
Well, it sounded like you had a mostly good experience and learned a lot at the very least.
It was the best first job ever. I was really lucky. A show written completely from a female point of view, and not like the hot wife, like a real woman with real issues and dealing with kids who were real kids, and with the best actors on television, Laurie Metcalf, John Goodman.
Incredible, yeah.
I mean, Rosa, just literally I'm so spoiled. And they had banned the studio and the network because they were so powerful they didn't come to table reads. They did not give notes. Wow. They couldn't come. They could come to the tapings, but they had to sit up in the green room. So I didn't know until 5 years into my career that studio networks gave notes because I'd never got them. I never heard of that before.
Speaking of that transition, it takes us to Gilmore Girls, obviously, on the WB, premiered in 2000, if I'm not mistaken. So we spoke recently, I know, 25 years. None of us has aged since then. We're stuck in time. But we spoke recently about this and just reflecting on the climate of the TV business in the year 2000. It was a few years into Sopranos. HBO was really sort of owning the critical landscape. But the WB had Buffy, it had Dawson's. So it was kind of taking the place of what Fox had been with 90210 and really curating what we would call youth content or teen content. What was your vision for telling the story, and how difficult was it to sell in the room? Because it sounds like it was actually a pretty quick process.
Okay, this is also a bad example, so I just warning you. It was Suzanne Daniel who was running the WB at the time. She actually said to me, I want you to write a comedic hour long for me. And I didn't know what that was because I came from half hour. So I just assumed it was more pages. So I went in and I had a bunch of pitches and ones that I had really, really worked on. And a half hour into it, I realized they're all bored and they'd called for menus because they were all going to order lunch and they were discussing who wants to share the matzo ball soup and they were looking at their watches. And then finally I was done and they said, do you have anything else? And I said, well,
now get this right.
There's
we have a little disagreement on what this is, but I'm pretty sure I'm right.
I'll go with your version, but I'm not sure it's true. I got the thing. It's about a mother and daughter, but they're kind of like, she had her young, so they're kind of close in age, so they're more like friends than mother and daughter. And they went, okay, we'll buy that. And I walked.
That was the whole pitch. One sentence.
I said
One
it
sentence
was a
the whole
bad
pitch.
story. So
they bought it.
So I walked out, and I was with.
Don't you hate her?
I was with.
I mean,
She's so lovable, we can't hate her.
I know.
Yeah.
You can't. Trust me, I'm horrible. So I walked out and I turned to my manager, Gavin Pallone at the time, and I said, I do not know what that show is. Because that's literally all I had. And he said, well, why suggest you figure it out? Because they just bought it. So
Did you know the setting at that time,
Nope,
that it was Connecticut?
nothing.
So you just the
Nothing.
basic premise. Okay.
nothing. And at the time I was setting everything urban and everything pretty much in New York because my whole life was about getting to New York, getting out of LA and getting to New York. So I just thought magically through osmosis, if I write it, it'll happen, which it did with Maisel. So anyhow, but that's another bad story. But so we were actually going to Connecticut to look at Mark Twain's house to get some decorating ideas. Very long story.
No, and because he wrote Huckleberry Finn there.
But he had great wallpaper. And so we went and we stayed in this, and we'd never been to Connecticut, and it was October. It was like leafing season.
Peak Gilmore season, if you will.
Yeah.
And there were...
The season that we now own, apparently.
Apparently,
according to the New
yes.
Yorker
You
magazine.
own autumn. Yes.
Yeah, we own autumn.
We went to Washington Depot.
We're making a play for winter, too.
And I love winter. Winter's my favorite. And everything was signs about the pumpkin patches and sign up for the hayride. And there's, festivals, and we're like, what the fuck is this all about?
This place real?
Yeah,
like,
it was.
felt like right out of Central
We
Casting.
had never really been into the East Coast away from New York
Ever.
City. So we drove. So it was this driving trip, and we were walking. We got out because we were in this kind of lovely town, and a woman pulled up and said, "Do you know where the pumpkin patch is?" And we're from urban. It's like we were shocked at what this was. It was just really sort of revealing to us.
We went into a diner and we were eating, and it was sort of like people were like, I need more coffee. And the person was like, well, go get it. So people were going up and getting their own coffee. And then like there were two teenagers who was like, my mom hit a deer this morning. So like I can't have the car this weekend. And I'm like, what is this place that we are in? And we were staying at this inn, and the inn was very bucolic. And there was this French concierge, very sort of snooty and imperious, checking us in, and I went up to the room, and I still have the piece of paper, and I just said, and
that says the name of the inn on it, and she just wrote out like exactly Suki, her best friend is a cook.
I wrote the dialogue for
French.
the peach sauce scene, and it's in the pilot. I have the dialogue; it went in the script. And I just sort of said, and the concierge will be French, and then she'll run the inn, and they'll live in this thing. And then I said to him, I go, but the parents have to live nearby. What's the nearby city? And it's like Hartford. And I go, okay, well, so Hartford, I guess that's fine. But like, what's the big, like, fancy business in Hartford?
I think it's insurance.
And
she went, okay, I'll make it an insurance
works
man.
on insurance. And like, there you go, Gilmore Girls, ladies and gentlemen.
We do hate you, Amy. This is just too much.
I told you. I warned you.
You totally warned us.
Creating something out of nothing is joyous and hellish.
And everything in between.
The Screenwriting Life podcast is about digging into the craft and emotional life of being a writer and an artist.
My co-host, Meg LaFauve, is an Oscar-nominated writer.
And my co-host, Lorian McKenna, is an Emmy-nominated showrunner. Together, we interview pro guests like Buffy showrunner Marty Noxon and Wall-E writer-director Andrew Stanton to talk about the vulnerable process of creating.
We want to help you keep writing and to know that you are not alone.
The Screenwriting Life is available anywhere podcasts are found.
So you talked about notes earlier and how you'd been spoiled and not having to navigate them as often as others had. What kind of notes, if any, were the execs at the WB giving you about the show? Because it seemed like they loved it out of the gate. But as the show went on, were there tonal shifts or story changes that they were encouraging you to pursue?
Well, Suzanne Daniel left.
She left immediately.
She left, unfortunately. So Amy lost her person there. So they did the pilot. It was shot. It was like 40th on their list of things that we might pick up, and every day it was like, oh, 2 fell out, 2 fell out, 2 fell out. It felt impossible, but finally they did pick it up. But it has such a different voice from everything else. It certainly wasn't Buffy. It wasn't genre. It also their big show was Dawson's Creek, and they loved everything about Dawson's Creek. So as Amy wrote these scripts, I was kind of working on them. I was running Family Guy at the time, and I came over and was kind of helping her at night.
That's how you met Alex Borstein.
Yes, on Family Guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who was the original Suki?
Who was
Yes,
the original
who was the original Suki.
And Mad TV would not let her out of her contract.
That's right.
So as these scripts were developed, and Amy wrote the first few, and I think I wrote number 3 or 4 or something like that. They were not happy. The Warner Brothers people were not happy. The WB people
What weren't
were
they
not
happy with?
They were not happy with. They felt it was probably too. They probably thought it was too slow. It wasn't plot driven like Dawson's Creek. Gilmore Girls had all the plot that something like Dawson's Creek
There's
has,
also
but it's
a
small.
lot of motherly notes. Why isn't she being more of a mother? Why
Yes.
isn't she being more of a mother? Where's the motherly moment? And
Like
it's
they were too friendly with each other.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is the whole point of the show,
Yeah,
right?
which is not the show you picked up, but that's okay. But she was gone again. Suzanne was gone, and
Right.
the
So you
then
lost your
there were
advocate on
Yeah.
the inside.
And this
a
is all
bunch
before.
of dudes who didn't get the show.
And this is all before the show aired. So take it from there. But basically, pretty much weekly,
Yeah. So once
people were calling and
so
saying,
once a week-
everyone's very unhappy with the show.
once a week, I got this call.
And how are the ratings, though?
No, this is before
We
it
weren't
was
on
on.
yet.
Even before?
This is
okay.
we're shooting it. We're shooting the shows, and once a week I would get a call saying we just want you to know. The studio would call and say, we just want you to know that the network, they're very angry and disappointed every week. And I'd be like, oh, I'm so sorry, they're angry and disappointed. Oh. And it happened every week. And so finally I said, you know what, they're not my mother. She's the only one who can be angry and disappointed at me on a constant level. So here's what you guys can do. You can fire me, and I have not put anything up on the walls yet. I can be out of here in a hot second. I'm fine being fired. I will go shopping. I love it. Or you can never call me again. But those are your choices, because I am working almost 24 hours a day on this. I am giving you everything I can possibly give you. There's nothing more I can do for you. If you are that upset, fire me. Let me go.
Then the pilot aired. It got good reviews. And on that same day, they sent her flowers, and they never bugged her like that again.
Lessons learned, right? Good for you, by the way.
I don't know why they didn't fire me. Like, I believe in my mind, they went, that's it, fire her. And they got a call and they went, what? Smallville's in trouble? And then they just forgot. That's what I believe. I believe a Weintraub show blew up, and that's why I didn't get fired.
Well,
You have to stand up for your vision. I mean,
You
you
do.
have to stand up for
and
your
I
vision.
appreciate too. We spoke recently that down the line they were also frustrated that Rory wasn't having enough sex.
Yes.
Now was that because of the Dawson's effect, where every week one of them was having like a pregnancy scare or some dramatic?
It was just
romance.
different. Rory is a different person, and it was just going to be a different. It was just going to be a different journey. Rory was always supposed to reflect more of. I think more of like certainly the young women in my family. It's like the all tribute to Dawson's Creek. They had a great run, but the OC that's a portion of teenage life. But we wanted to show Rory as someone who was interested in other things, close to her mother.
Also, if you thought about it just from a character standpoint, forget a rating standpoint, her mother got pregnant at 15, 16 years old. The last thing in the world Rory is going to do is start fucking around as a teenager. It's just like, it's psychology. It's like, I want to go to Harvard. I want to go to college. I want to do this. I'm not letting a dick anywhere near me until I get that big admissions letter that says I'm going somewhere. I mean,
at
it's
the
just
same time,
logic.
and at the same time, she was falling in love in the pilot. She meets Dean. You know,
we got to see her have romance.
yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
The conflict in the pilot between her and Lorelai was all about, now I don't know if I want to go to Chilton. And Lorelai was the one that really had this vision for her of like, I don't want you to have the struggles that I had. I want you to go down the path that I think you can go down. I want you to get into a great school, get into a great college, have a life. And she didn't. So it was the panoply of life in this show that Amy created and we were trying to show. So yeah.
Thank you so much for creating these characters, by the way. I've rewatched it recently in its entirety, and it still feels like an act of rebellion that the show existed at all. And these characters were allowed to
why do you say an act of rebellion?
Just for what we were talking about, just in terms of the fact that they are women talking to each other, and sometimes that's all they do. And there are no deaths and car chases and horrible events that take place. I read one sort of think piece that said Gilmore Girls was successful because it was low stakes, which I actually think is sort of insulting. Because what are stakes? Were people being killed every week?
Yeah.
Which I guess Sopranos would be sort of like the high stakes version of that. But just the idea that these women were allowed to just be women and they were smart. And that was the show. Yeah. It's still rare. I can't think of another series.
Yeah, there's that Bechdel test that,
right.
Is her first name Allison? That
yeah.
like, it's go to any movie, watch any TV show, and generally when two women are together, they will be talking about a man.
Right.
And it's not that we were trying not to do that, but we were naturally not doing that all the time, for sure. I mean, because that's just not. That's how That's how too many women are portrayed in TV and film, and it's not how we experience the world.
In 2007, and then.
But if you guys want to talk about boys, that's fine. If you want to talk about me, or
That'll be part 2.
All the nuns did was sit around and talk about Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus.
He's so dreamy, that long hair.
He was a good dude. So the show lands on Netflix in 2014, I believe, and was an instant juggernaut sensation. And I recently read this piece of data that blew my mind. Netflix recorded 500 million viewing hours of Gilmore Girls between January and June of 2023. 500 million. That's more than Seinfeld or Stranger Things.
The stats were shocking to us too.
Truly shocking.
They were shocking, except we have a lot of people come up to us and we're hearing it last night. I've probably seen it 30 times, 40 times. I asked them questions about why, how but I mean, yeah, that stat it was absolutely a shock to us.
It's seasonal, but it's also, I think people just want the comfort. It's so basic.
Well, we have some people saying, I've watched it so many times, now I just have it on in the background, which is great. I mean, as long as it's not the first time you watch it, it's in the background. But
I did that, though, because when I write, I have to have something on. So I
know you shared the very odd movie once with me that you like to write. And
Sophie's Choice was a big one for a while.
Similarly dark, and actually thematically, in tune with what he was talking about earlier. Spotlight.
Oh, I love Spotlight. I wrote so many scripts to Spotlight on the back. Have you guys seen Spotlight? It's so good. But I just went through periods, because there was also a period where I had Buffy the Vampire Slayer on a loop, or the Sopranos a lot. So, but yeah, I did write several Maisel things to Spotlight.
So much going on in that.
It's a very good movie.
It is, but it's wonderful, sort of peaceful chattering in the background. So obviously you did the Year in the Life reboot on Netflix, which was also a huge hit. Do you have any more Gilmore Girls episodes in you? Because it was a bit of a cliffhanger with Rory sort of facing a new era of her life. Could we see more of this? The whole world is wondering.
Well, as Donald Trump said about the Canadian Prime Minister claiming that Canada's not for sale, never say never. I mean, we don't rule it out, because we would have been idiots to rule it out before. We didn't see the Gilmore Netflix movies coming, and we absolutely don't rule it out. We're really close to the cast. We love that world. We love Stars Hollow. So who knows?
But there was a reason to go back when Ed Herman passed. When Ed Herman passed, it almost felt like, and everybody felt it. Everybody felt like it was so big for all of us. That we had to honor that somehow. So I do think that if we do it, not that someone else has to die. I'm not saying that, but there's got to be a real reason to.
But it felt like a craving among the fans for sort of
Yeah.
the community of it.
I know, but I want more Sopranos, and James Gandolfini is not around, so
Understood.
So it just has to be organic, and we were all at a festival together, weirdly, and at a bar is where it happened, where we all kind of went, hey, we all kind of have like February off. It was just one of those weird sort of things, and that's sort of how it came together. And I think that, like, if the stars align,
Sure.
we certainly love the people.
Anything is possible.
Yeah.
So Bunheads was an interesting experience for you, a very personal show, 2012, and it only had one season, which I'm sure felt a little disappointing for you. But I wanted to know what you learned from that experience, that when you were thinking about Maisel and wanting to make Maisel, that you applied to that next job. And obviously very different, ABC Family, Amazon Prime, very different brands. But what did you learn about the Bunheads experience that you brought to Maisel?
It was just so completely different. It's kind of it's apples and oranges. I will say that in the back of my mind, I kind of knew from day one it was the wrong place for that show.
You did.
Yeah.
You felt that.
It was ABC Family.
That happens
and
quite a lot in this business.
The two leads were Sutton Foster and Kelly Bishop, and this was a network built around, got your first period, here's how you go to the beach. So
you
it's
should have done your clairvoyant period.
I should have done
with
it.
Sutton,
I should have worked it out
and
there.
it all would have.
It was just not. It was not. I just felt it, and I remember saying to Kate Jurgens, who was running at the time, I kept saying, "Are you sure you want this show?"
Gave her an out, it sounds like.
100%. I kept saying it because I just like, and she's like, no, we want it. We want to broaden our blah blah blah. Never believe that. But so I will say, it was a lot of heartache losing that show, because first of all, just going to work and Sutton Foster's there every day is like the best.
That must have felt like a dream.
It was the best thing in the world, because she is the best thing in the world, and the only one who has an even worse origin story than I do for people who want to be on Broadway. So I'll let her tell that. But but what it did do is sort of like get us interested in using dance as a dramatic tool, as opposed to like, here's a fun dance. Because we started to veer into using the dance to express, like the first time we did Istanbul as Constantinople, that They Might Be Giants, that was a fluke because the show came in really, really, really short once we cut it down, and we were just had to put something else in the show. And it's like, well, we can't just I didn't want to just throw a dance in just for the hell of it. It had to feel like something. And we ended on sort of an angry, frustrated emotion for one of the characters, Sasha. And it felt like, well, let's have the dance be the drama of that, and how she works through that moment. And that was sort of a big thought process in terms of that brought us to Etoile. What got us to Maisel, quite honestly, was just the fact that I had a meeting with Amazon and didn't really have anything thought out for it. And my dad was a comic.
Are you picking up a pattern here?
And I kind of walked, and they go, what do you want to do next? I go, I don't know, like a housewife who becomes a stand-up comic. And they went, all right, we'll buy that.
Oh, you're killing me.
It's
killing me with
it's
these
horrible.
So speaking of Maisel and the fact that this was an Amazon Prime Video show, there is in your work, both of your work, a recurring wistfulness for the past and sort of an anti-technology sentiment.
But not nuns.
Not nuns. Not nuns. We're all for it. But even just the no cell phone sign in Luke's diner, that's so prominently placed in almost every scene, where we want this to feel like a space that's anachronistic and warm and like Andy Griffith, right? So it's so strange to think that Maisel would end up on this giant streaming service in terms of your preference for sort of old-fashioned showbiz.
Where else were we going to put it?
But did that feel kind of strange to you, with the idea that you're making this comfort series, and a lot of your series evoke that kind of nostalgia, that suddenly it was being disseminated by this hyper technical entity? Because I think about this and it feels not bad, just kind of a strange fit in a way.
I mean, these companies, they opened up new avenues, and they also cause some chaos. And they know it. I mean, they know that there's good about them and bad about them. So, you know, I think in this business, you just have to try to utilize what you have to work with. We disagree with a lot of what the streamers do, but we also disagreed a lot with what the broadcast networks did. You know, when we start off in half hour, you had a nice chunk of running time and maybe 6 minutes of commercials. And then within 10 years, you had 8.5 minutes of commercials. And it made everything have to be too frenetic. They cut it up into little chunks instead of like the Cheers model, which was a cold opening, an act 1 and act 2. Now there's 5 acts within a half an hour.
And then they run credits under your last 30 seconds. So think about the classic sitcoms that ended on a dramatic moment. You couldn't do that anymore. You couldn't ever have a moment where it wasn't
There has
just
to be a resolution at the end.
Yeah, and resolution that wasn't story. They were actually saying, we don't want it to be story. We just sort of want it to be like a funny bit because we're running commercials under it. So the networks ruined the sitcom for many, many, many years.
Well, if you think about Norman Lear and the stories he was able to tell, which felt like live theater and very timely,
That's
and
what
impactful.
people loved about it.
And starring people who came from the stage. And to your point, yes, I think the churn of pilot season and the pressures started to kind of creep into
And
that.
marketing took over. Marketing, creative just had no say. It was all about marketing, and that was the downfall of network television. That's what opened the door for streamers to sort of march on in and say, hey, you've got a story you want to tell that isn't, a sketch. You want to actually dramatize something. Here's
and
how
give
you
you
do
a
it.
great budget to make this show.
Sometimes they give you a great budget. I mean, it's Netflix threw money at their first few shows, so everybody thought there's infinite money out there. And then Netflix, what people don't remember is then they stopped throwing the money at the shows, and the other people were like, "Hey, wait a minute, House of Cards got all this money? What's going?" So it's,
And it was an experiment. It really, a
was an
lot of this
experiment.
is a big experiment, and I think and we all feel it now in a way that maybe in 2011 and 12 we just thought, "Ooh, what's this cool trick that's happening?"
Yeah.
Right. So Maisel, obviously an insane success, one of my favorite shows of all time. I think I'm correct in saying 80 Emmy nominations and 22 wins. Yeah. And I think about those moments you had on stage. First of all, I think about Alex's speeches a lot. Alex Borstein.
They're the best.
Really, truly, if you haven't seen her speech, look it up on YouTube. Gorgeous. But I wondered, Amy, when you were finally on that stage, after years of never being placed in that critical acclaim box, like Gilmore was a special thing, but it was never acknowledged in the same way that West Wing and Sopranos was. Were you able to appreciate in that moment that you had created a brand and that people loved it and it resonated with them?
No, I just didn't want to get played off. I was just like, I was so obsessed with not getting played off and not having to go, wait. Like all I wanted to do was like say something and go eat cheese. I just wanted to get off the stage as quickly as possible. Awards were great for us because they made Amazon feel good about the investment in the show. And it's always lovely. Like, it's lovely for me to see Alex get an award or Rachel.
Yeah, we love our actors.
Them being rewarded is amazing, or there are craftsmen. I mean, that's wonderful. I awards are very hard for me to go to, and the Spanx aspect of it all is very confounding, and I just news it comes out somewhere, so maybe it's sucking in here, but there's going to be a problem in back that you're not really focused on.
It feels inherently not like a great idea.
It's bad. You just have to literally not have anything that needs to be sucked in, otherwise it doesn't work. You just have to sort of give up. But it was good because Amazon suddenly felt like, oh, wait a minute, this show about a 50s housewife, which is, I don't know, is that our brand? It's sort of like, wait a minute, we get to go get dressed up and go be fancy. They like being fancy, so that was the greatest
and
gift
also
for
those
us.
award shows, as silly as they may seem, if a person's watching the Emmys and has never heard of your show, and then they see you on stage and it encourages them to watch it, that's great.
Yeah. I by the way, I don't think they're silly. I am not
And
anti
as
awards.
they may seem silly to the outside world.
They're very stressful.
They're stressful.
But they serve a really important, especially marketing purpose. And you'd be silly to discount it because they make for you to be able to do what you do, you can't just do it in a vacuum unless you are Steven Spielberg and you have so much money that you can, I want to make a $1 billion movie and I'll pay for it myself and still have $6 billion left. Most people can't do that. So you need people to give you the resources and the space and to do it. And whatever helps you get to that, I think you got to support.
Huge. And also it allows actors to get paid more. When they
Yeah.
have earned a trophy, they can then negotiate for a better
Yeah.
salary. I think it's
Yeah.
a very useful system.
I agree.
And on to Étoile. Congratulations. And very gorgeous show. And Dan, I'd like to talk to you first because this is the first co-creation credit that you have shared with Amy. And I wanted to know what's been your biggest learning curve in telling the story of Étoile, and maybe explain what Étoile means in this context.
Well, étoile means star in French. It's a common ballet term. I like how Simon Callow spits it out at Cheyenne. Étoile. It's fantastic. I would say, this was an ensemble. This was a large ensemble, and it was not family oriented. We had traditionally been doing family oriented. We both came up in the sitcom world, kind of writing very strong family dynamics, usually with a strong female lead, even in these sitcoms. Really, like Étoile was a production challenge because of the two countries.
And it's a lot in French and a lot of international actors.
It's a lot in French, although that was not the hardest part. Once we found our translator, I'm really proud of our scenes that are in French because I think it captures some of the weirdness of France, weirdness of Paris, their hierarchy and their bureaucracy. When Charlotte Gainsbourg is sitting in front of her ministers, it feels like there's no equivalent English speaking scene
And
that
I
we
love
could
that
write like that.
that it is so much French. It
Yeah.
really makes us feel like we're watching these two worlds interact.
And the French actors are astonishingly
They're wonderful.
great.
But I mean, it's really just like what we worked a lot on balancing the storylines because there were a lot of characters. Every character was very, very specific. We got a note early on, and it's one of those notes that on the surface sounds like purely like a compliment, and underneath we know may not be a compliment. Someone at Amazon said, every character in this could have their own show. And you think, that's a compliment. But actually, they might be saying, you've got too much in this show. And this is how I'm telling you this. It's like when people say, I really love the writing. And you go, we're dead.
You are fucked if anyone ever says, I really love the writing. You're like, oh, I'm canceled.
We're dead. So it was really the balance of the ensemble, all those storylines, all those threads. It was a real feat of juggling, but we were happy with the way the 8 episodes turned out.
They were very beautifully made, absolutely. And I like the writing and the performances, by the way, not just the writing. And the show has a lot to say, which feels timely to me, about the value of the arts, how much it costs to make art, and whose responsibility it is to make art. And even in the news every day, we're seeing art sort of being threatened. So if you could have people have a takeaway from the series about what art should mean to us and the value of something like ballet, which is kind of hard to justify in a lot of contexts. What is the value of this kind of art from your perspective? Amy, what do you hope people take away from the show?
I think there's a couple of things. I think one thing, just on a more general basis, is I think people need to just wake up and pay attention, because things that are important to you can go away. Things that you just assume are always going to be there can leave, can be taken from you.
Yeah, first they come for ballet, then they're coming for Taylor Swift. Okay, just so you guys know.
And then the arts in general are under siege, and the thing about the arts are it's not some rarefied, that's for somebody else sort of thing. Art can, a kid who doesn't know where they are or where they belong or why are they here, and the music can get them through something, or drawing can help them express something that they can't put into words, or dance can help you get out of your headspace and into a different space. Art is more than just everyone gets dressed up and going to Lincoln Center, and the without it, I believe the human race, it's game over, because I think that we are conflicted, complicated beings, but the one thing that can change your mind space is, oh, that person's experience is not something that I've ever experienced or understood, but now I'm seeing it through eyes, through a painting, through a song, through a poem, through a dance, and now I feel different, or I think different, or that can make me change my perspective, or we can all come together in a room, and every one of us maybe thinks that we hate the other person, but there's for one moment we're all in the same space and we're all seeing something. And we live in New York City, where we see people with their MAGA hats and they're like, can't take my gun from me, and they'll walk into a Broadway show and they'll end up crying and walk out. And it's like, that can change something in a brief moment. You can feel different. It is, as soon as cavemen learned how to, hey, wait a minute, I can draw a buffalo up on the side. That's art. Art is an expression of a human need. And I think that it's discounted as something that is like, well, without that, athletics is art.
It is.
I don't discount athletics. Athletics gives how many kids find a life, find a purpose, find discipline, find teamwork, find what's great inside of them through something that if they didn't have it, if it wasn't given to them, if they weren't exposed to it, what was that path? Art is the same thing, and discounting any of that and thinking that the human race can go without it, I think is naive. I think it's dangerous. And I think what's happening right now, that this is all being stripped away from us, and people need to, and I'm not talking about just fancy ballet. I'm talking about regional theater, where small stories are being produced and being nurtured. Those are falling away and they are being disappeared. And we turn around one day and that's all gone. Look at nation. Look at the Cultural Revolution. Look at what happens when society tamps down on artists and thinkers and philosophers and people who want to have opinions. It doesn't bode well. And I'm not saying that Etoile solves all that, and watch 8 episodes of Etoile and buy some toilet paper, kids, and the world's going to be perfect. But I'm just saying, like, it is a space we are living in right now, and I think that people have to wake the fuck up and open your eyes and fight for things that are important, even if it's on a small level. So that's, to me, what our Etoile message does on a small scale.
And
I think we could lose golf. That's just my own personal opinion.
Not like we could lose golf, but we could lose golf.
Just get rid of golf.
Yeah, okay.
And it doesn't affect the quality of the world.
Well, then we wouldn't have a good walk spoiled.
No, I know.
So I could sit here with you for 20 more hours and never have enough time with you, but in the interest of time, I have a 2-part final question for you. What do you hope listeners of this podcast take away from hearing your Hollywood stories? And what have you learned about yourselves in telling them? So I'm going to start with Dan.
Perseverance, I think, in our business, when you have something in your gut and that you think of, something you think of that really hits your gut, and you think, I see that, I know I can do that. Don't let the system, don't let all the procedures and all the people that are involved take away that initial vision, because 9 times out of 10, it's going to ruin it. So you have to learn. You have to learn how to collaborate, and it's really, really important to listen, but it's also important to maintain your vision, because we have both been in this position. We've seen it a million times. If you do everything a studio says that you should do and you don't agree with it, if it doesn't turn out well, they're going to blame you anyway. So you might as well stick to your vision, the thing that gave you that feeling, and see it through.
And what have you learned about yourself, Dan, in sharing your story today?
That I have a thing about nuns, because I've been listening to myself. No, I think, we're working people. We Amy got lucky breaks, but everyone who succeeds in this business gets lucky breaks. And we've had a lot of failures and a lot of times when we were not in vogue and we waited it out. That's part of persevering too, is if you're out of vogue, don't give up hope. Just keep going. If you have a passion for what you do, just keep going, because things turn the other way suddenly, and suddenly you're in vogue.
I love that. And Amy, what do you hope people have learned from your story?
I may not have stressed it enough, but I think it's important that women help women out. And I only say that because I have been helped out by so many great men in this business. And really, like, I would not have a career if it was not for Bob Meyer. I would not have a career without Gavin Pallone. Gavin Pallone is the one who flat out said to me, "Oh, you're directing the season finale." I'm like, "You're adorable." And I directed that fucking season finale, and now I'm a director. Like, I have had great people, and I won't call them mentors so much because I'm a little too scattered to like be mentored. I'm sort of like, man, I'm gonna go do my own thing. But like, I've had supporters, and none of them were women. And I mean, Suzanne Daniels, actually that's wrong. She but then she split. But I haven't had any women do that, and I think that is. And I am not a big person for like, men are bad, men are evil. Men are not bad. There are some shitty men and there's some shitty women and there's shitty people all over the place. There's great men and there's great women. But what men do is they support each other and they connect and they help each other, and women still do not do it enough. And we talk about it and we say, like, we have support groups and there's teas where we get together. And I'm not a big believer in those support groups and teas, because I feel like, why are we separating ourselves out from men? If we're saying we all need to have tea separately, why? Are we not as good? Do we not belong in the same club room? We belong in the same club room, but we need to help each other out and we need to help each other get there. It's very, very, very important. And there's less and less support for new writers, new directors, people coming up these days. The unions are not, they're not looking out for that. They're looking out for other shit, but nobody's looking out for, like, how do new writers break in? You know, budgets are coming down. It's like, the studios networks are happy to have like one person write everything. Who's staffing? Where's the responsibility to build a staff so that you are teaching people? Why are you not letting people on set so that they learn how things work? Where is the community to train the next generation of writers and directors? If it's got to be on us. And I believe now we're just in the world where, like, it's every man for themselves. And so I think it's a personal responsibility issue. I take it very seriously. Dan takes it very seriously. And I wish everybody would take it very seriously, because I would not be here if I did not have those men who helped me out and pushed me up and said, you're going to do this no matter what you think. You can go, be, do. Please get out of my office with that hat. Without that, this doesn't happen.
Very well said. And what have you learned about yourself today, Amy?
That I have an endless capacity to talk about myself. Just an endless. I find myself fascinating, apparently, because I am not out of words yet. I don't know. I like to think that that my anger sustains me. I think my anger sustains me. I think it really does.
You say that with the biggest smile on your face,
I know, because I just think I'm so mad about so many things that you just got to get up and just take it out on somebody some way. And maybe it's just through a script. I don't know, but I just think that's kind of the key to me.
Well, again, we could go on and on and on for days and days and days and never fully capture who you are, but I'm so honored that you sat down and told us your story today. And thank you. Just thank you for all the work that you've done and for all the support you've given the next generation.
But we get to thank you because you always do our great panels, and then we say thank you, and then you run away, and I never get to say thank you. So you can't go anywhere right now.
I cannot.
It's
I'm
just
captive.
us. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm
Thank
so
you.
honored. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
My Hollywood Story is a production of Hippolyta Films and Entertainment. It is produced by me, Stacey Wilson Hunt, along with Sonia Slutsky and Wendy Green. Series producers also include Daryl Young and Janet Grayson. Our sound mixer is Luke Tierney, with camera by Ramiro Cantu. My Hollywood Story is edited by Nathaniel Wixon, with original music by Madi Gabriel and Jenny Carr of Moon and Star. Our logo design is by Brad Mitchell. And I'd like to give a special thanks to Champion Turf. My Hollywood Story is sponsored by Mattel Films and recorded at Neue House Hollywood. If you like what you hear, give us a follow, leave a review, and let us know what you think.